Hi and welcome to the Ruby Tuesday. My name is Ruben and this is my movie review for Netflix's original film, Kate. It's a non-spoiler review, so don't worry about that. Let me know in the comments below, were you looking forward to this film? Let's jump in. So an assassin has 24 hours to live and she has 24 hours basically to get a vengeance on who done this to her. And yeah, that's terrible English. Who did this thing to her that is making her die? Stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Kate, Woody Harrelson as Varric, and Maiku as Annie. Directed by Cedric Nicholas Troyan, who directed Snow White and the Huntsman. So I have mixed feelings about this film. I was reading the write-up that we get sometimes when you're a reviewer or a press person. Part of the write-up, the director said that you don't often see female leads in this type of roles, this type of role nowadays. And I thought that was incorrect, because if you think about just even the last 30 years, you would have gone from Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, although she's not an assassin, she's definitely the female badass hero. We've had Charlize Theron in various roles, so it's nothing new. We've also had this story done before, like Crank. If you remember Crank, Jason Statham gets poisoned and he needs to keep his adrenaline up and survive the day to get his vengeance. And that's basically this film. It's just like an updated version of that film, but with a female lead, more stylistic. If you mixed it with John Wick and a bit of Sin City, you would have started to get the feeling of what this film is. Also anime. At one point there's a whole Tokyo Ghoul sequence. There's this imagery of Tokyo Ghoul on the side of the building. I'm guessing that's where they housed it or created the film. I don't know. If you've been to Tokyo, you'll know. You probably would have seen it. But it just was so stylistic and vibrant with the neon colors that it really stood out. So in cinematography wise, I thought this film looked spectacular, especially when it comes to the action sequences, the choreography. Mary Elizabeth Winstead went through the same training regimen as Keanu Reeves did for the John Wick films, and so you'll see the same sort of choreography, although I do feel like in parts this film is way gorier than the John Wick style. Even though if you remember some of the movements of how Keanu Reeves would break somebody's arm or snap their neck over a counter, here the use of weapons in a way is much more visceral in parts. I was quite shocked. There are moments when you will probably audibly release a sound. A few sounds came out of me that I wasn't expecting, like ah or whoa. You know, your reactions, your guttural reactions from some of the stuff you're seeing was unexpected. The action sequences themselves are very reminiscent of the John Wick style, but if you add like the neon colors with that, and then you add like an anime vibrancy along with the score, which feels like it's very anime, it's almost like there's a graphic novel gone from graphic novel to screen here. There's one sequence that I was absolutely in love with, where she's on top of the rooftop. She does these kind of roly-polies, and just the way it's shot just made me go, whoa, that is awesome. So there's moments in this film where I was like, this is fantastic. But there are also moments in this film where you're like, I've seen this done a million times. Now, I loved Mary Elizabeth Winstead in this role. I love it when there are actors that do action roles that don't normally do action roles, because it takes you so much back that you're not expecting them to be able to maybe pull off the role, or just you've never would have expected them to be even thought of as an action hero, an action star in that way. And I think she pulls it off totally. She has this... There's a mix of, you know, she's a badass, but she's also dying at the same time. She manages to pull off the facial expressions of, I'm totally in pain, I'm dying, my body is being destroyed, but also I'm a badass, and even if I look at you, there's literally one sequence where she looks at someone and they drop their weapon. It's that sort of atmosphere that she's able to portray. This film, however, does do the classic, the bad guy is very one-dimensional. There's not a lot to him. He's the bad guy for the sake of it. There's betrayal. There's the Yakuza that she's fighting, hordes of bad guys. I do think, though, this film also falls in the territory of disbelievability, because there's only so much you as a viewer can believe that someone is able to take. There's only so much punishment that you'll be like, ah, yeah, she's a badass and she'll keep getting up because her willpower in her head is amazing. But a person can only get stabbed, shot, beaten up, thrown across the room, exploded so many times until you're like, what is she, a cyborg? And I did get that feeling a number of times. In John Wick, there is like a badass moment to him. Even when he's getting beaten up, you believe that he can push through. In this, I believed it for the majority, but then there comes a moment you're like, yeah, I don't believe it anymore. So where I really enjoyed this film, and I actually do want to watch it again, because of how it looks, the atmosphere, the cinematography, the stylistic way it's shot. There's some incredible scenes that I don't want to tell you about. Just the way it's shot with the camera angles, I just thought was great, and, you know, makes me sit up on edge and going, how did they do that? But then the story is so like generic bad guy. There's a moment where the story kind of veers off to the right, which you would have kind of guessed. But it kind of forces you to like the character more. It feels like it's a forced storyline. We need something now to make us like our protagonist, because she's an assassin, she's killing everybody, and she is not as likable as you wanted her, so we're going to give her this thing to make her a sort of surrogate parent. And so that story, I think, is quite endearing. But because we have generic bad guy, and because we have generic Yakuza with hordes of bad guys, there isn't a lot of heart to be had. If you compare that to John Wick, which is easily comparable, this film, or Crank, there is some heart to be had. The betrayal of John Wick, the loss of his dog, his family, the reason why that dog was so important to him, or the car. You have a little bit of that, and when the revenge story kind of kicks into gear into this film, you're probably more propelled. So you're going to have to give this film about half its time before it gets into the kind of the revenge story, which is probably where you're going to be more invested in. So I'll give this film a solid plus. Maybe I'll enjoy it more the second time when my expectations are different. I know what the film is now. Some films do kind of tend to grow, and some films get worse, much like musical albums. Sometimes you'll watch, you love the album, the more you listen to it, or worse. So I think this may be one of them. I'm hoping I like it more the second time, because I wanted to go in loving it. The moment, great visual scenes, well choreographed, loved the lead, would like more in this style. Not sure that's going to happen. Thanks so much for watching, but most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.